Hi, my name is Jennifer, and my family loves camping in the fall and the spring, and when the weather isn't always nice. Sometimes you get rainy campouts. And when it rains, we love to have a stash of card games available to play in the trailer. So I thought I'd share our favorite rainy day camping card games. So first, you might notice the stack of games that we like to keep in the trailer are all compact. These are all small card games, and they're all really easy to travel with, which makes it nice. Now, I have 6 games that I'd like to share with you. 3 of them are really family focused that are great to play with the kids or even for the kids to play on their own. And then the other 3 are games that we like to play with other adults. They're ways to entertain ourselves while the kids are doing something else with the rainy day, like watching a movie. Now, I'm going to go through these games and give you a quick overview of how the gameplay works. I'm not going to go through all of the rules in detail, but I just want to give you an overview of how the gameplay works to see if it might be a good fit for you to include with your camping games. The first game I want to talk about is Nut Squirrel. And Nut Squirrel is a fantastic game for kids. There's no reading involved and it is super simple. So this is a game that we started playing when our youngest was only 2 years old, and she would sometimes win. She didn't need any assistance. It's a really super easy game to play, but it's still enjoyable for adults. Now, how Nut Squirrel works is there are basically 2 types of cards. You have different nuts or seeds, and then you also have squirrels. And the goal is to collect as many nuts or seeds as you can while not getting the squirrels. This game can be adjusted for different difficulty levels just by taking out some of the squirrel cards. So if you leave all the squirrels in, it's the most difficult, and then if you take a few out, you can make it easier. How the game works is you start with a draw pile in the middle of the table. Nobody starts out with any cards. The youngest player goes first, and they draw as many cards as they like. I got a squirrel right away, which would mean my turn would end. Then the next person would go, and they could draw as many cards as they would like. So I got a nut, I'm gonna go one more, and I got an acorn. So I didn't get a squirrel, so I would get to keep all of these cards here. Then the next person would go, and they could pull as many cards as they like. Got some seeds, I'm gonna go for one more, and again, they did not get any squirrels, they got only nuts and seeds, so they keep all of those. Then the next player goes, and they draw however many cards they like. But if they get a squirrel, just keep going till we get one. Wow, lots of acorns and seeds in this. Oh, so now I got a squirrel. So because I got a squirrel, now all of these cards will go into the discard, and the people who have nuts and seeds, these now get banked, which means that on their next turn, they're not going to go away. So these are the cards that they keep, and then the play just continues until you get to the end of the deck. The discard pile should be separate. Until you get to the end of the deck, and then you count up, and whoever has the most nuts and seeds wins the game. So it's really simple. The kids have fun with it, and it's easy enough that they can teach it to other kids at camp, which is fun too. Next is Camping with Sasquatch. So this is another fun game to play with kids. It is basically a matching game, and the art style on these cards is really fun too. So how this game works is each player gets dealt 7 cards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then in the center of the table, you'd have your draw deck, and then you start with 3 cards on the table, and these should all be different colors. So we got all different colors. And on the table, you could have one of each color card. And then on your turn, you have your hand of cards, and you draw 1 card, and then you could play 2 cards. And the idea is to get a match of 3 cards. You can either match by having 3 of the same color but with different icons. So like the fishy fishy card, I can add to the frying pan a fishy fishy fish or a fishy fishy fishing pole. And now they're all the same color but 3 different icons. And that counts as a match of 3 cards. And so I would get to keep those cards in my pile. The other way that you can match is by matching 3 of the same color that also have 3 of the same icon. So the hiking stick with the hiking stick with the hiking stick. That is also a match of 3. So then you'd be able to keep that over on the side. If you don't have a match that you can put on the board, you can add a new color. So there can't be 2 of the same color out there, but you can have 1 of each color. And then there are also Sasquatch cards, which count as a wild card. So if you put down a Sasquatch card, you still need to match the color, but then you can have a set of 3 by either getting another marshmallow to put here, or you can put a different item. So a chocolate or a graham cracker. Either way, it would be a set of 3 as long as they're all the same color. So the goal with this game is to be the first one that has no cards left in your hand. And then at the end, you calculate up the points. You get more points for the Sasquatches. Any Sasquatch you have left in your hand counts as negative points, as well as any cards that you have left in your hand. So you tally it all up, and then whoever has the most points wins. And again, one of the fun things about this game is the cards are really fun, the art style is really fun, and that makes it a nice experience for the kids. The next game that we like to play with the kids is called Not It, and this is specifically the Camping Chaos Edition. So this is a fun case. It just slides off, and then you pull out these 3 dice and the deck of cards. And then the back of this actually acts as a dice tower, which is a really fun part of the game. So when you roll the dice, you could just put them in here, and then they come out through this little tent in the dice tower. So that makes the game extra fun that you get to roll dice. And basically how this works is everybody gets some cards. The number of cards varies depending on how many players you have. But say I have these cards. The raccoon counts as a wild card. And the rest of these cards have a color, a background pattern, and then an item, an icon on the front. And people take turns being the ranger. So you go around in a circle, and what the ranger does is roll the dice, and then you want to put down a card that does not match the dice. So there will be a color, a background pattern, and an icon. And you have to find a card that doesn't have any 3 of those items. And then when you put it down, you yell, "Not it." And then the last person to put a card down has to keep the card in their hand. They don't get to get rid of it that round. The raccoon card counts as a wild card, but if more than one player plays it at the same round, then both of those people take a penalty card. And if you make a mistake and you put down a card that does share the color, pattern, or icon that was on the dice that was rolled, then you take a penalty card. And the goal is to be the first one with no cards in your hand. So if this was my hand and the ranger rolled the dice, I would need to find a card that is not blue, not waves in the background, and not a compass. So this has a compass, so that would not work. This has waves in the background, so that would not work. This is not blue, does not have waves, and is not a compass. So I can put this down and say, not it. The kids really like getting to roll the dice in this game, taking turns being the ranger, and then they also like getting to yell, not it. So this has become a fun camping game for our family. Okay, now on to the games that we like playing with adults while the kids are watching a movie or doing something else with the rainy day. And the first is Camping Fluxx. Now, Fluxx is a game that has a ton of different versions. So there's lots of different styles of the Fluxx game, and the cards do kind of change depending on the version. We like this Camping Fluxx game. Now, the very basic rules of this game is you draw one card and you play one card. So you'll have cards in your hand, and when it's your turn, you will draw a card and you will play one card. But the rules of this game are constantly in flux, and that is part of the fun. So how you win the game can change, the different goals, and how many cards you draw, how many cards you play, and what happens on a turn, that can all change every turn. So you have different goal cards, and the goal cards are one of the cards that you can play during your one play. And the goal cards have different keeper cards. And the keeper cards, if you have the keeper cards that the goal card requires, then it automatically triggers and you won. So if somebody put down a goal that if you have s'mores, you win the game, which means you need to have graham crackers, marshmallows, and chocolate, and you have keepers in front of you that have chocolate, marshmallows, and graham crackers, then as soon as this goal goes down, if you have all those keepers in front of you, then you win. And the one play for the turn could be putting down a goal or putting down these keepers. So you would have had to use your plays to put your keepers out, but then as soon as this goes, any rules that come out are effective immediately. So you could change the goals. You could also change the rules. So instead of play one, you could do play all but one. And then you have to play everything in your hand except one. There's also a bunch of other new rules that you could add. Sometimes it increases your hand limit. Sometimes it changes how many times you draw. So like the most recent person that has gone camping draws an extra card and stuff like that. There are also actions that can be played. So the actions are one-time events that let you play multiple things at once or take somebody else's keeper, change up the game in some kind of random way, and it only applies to that one turn, that one action. So this game is really fun and it has a lot of replayability because it really does change with every game depending on what rules you have in play and what actions and what the goals are at the time. The next game is Love Letters, which is a really small game that comes in this little bag. So there are cards and there are tokens. And basically how this works is you want to end the game with the highest point card that you can. And the princess is the highest value card, so that's the ultimate goal. You're writing a love letter and you want it to get to the princess. So if you can't get it to the princess, the highest other card like the king or the chancellor or the countess, those would have the best route to get it to the princess. So how this game works is it's played in rounds, and you go through and you first take a card and it's going to be out of play. And so you don't know which card is removed. It could be the princess and there's only one. So then you continue and each person starts with one card, and then on their turn, they draw a card and then they choose which card they want to play and which card they want to keep. And you don't show people who you want to keep, but anything you want to play, you would put face up. And then each card does do something. So this one says, if the king or prince is in your hand, you must play this card. So I played it. So it might mean that I have the king or prince in my hand as the other card, but it's not a guarantee. I could have played it even if that wasn't the case, but I would have to play it if that was the case. Some of the other cards have you reveal your hand to other people or swap hands. And then the round ends when all the cards are gone or if you're the last person left. And if you win the round, then you get one of these tokens and then you play again. And the amount of tokens that you need to win depends on how many people are playing the game. So it's a fun, secretive game and it's really simple, easy to play. And then the last game that I want to go over is Hero Realms. And Hero Realms is a deck building game. So how Hero Realms works is there is a market area of cards in the center of the table for all players. So there's 5 cards and you start off with, so 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And so these cards are available for any player to purchase. This is the draw pile. There'd be discard over here. And then there are also these fire gems that are always available. And then each player has a starter deck, which has some gold pieces. And then it also has a dagger, which does 1 damage, and then a ruby, which is worth more gold than the standard gold, and then a short sword, which does 2 damage. So you start off with this deck. Now each turn you use your entire hand. So if you go first, you draw 3 cards. If you go second, then you would draw 5 cards, and then 5 cards would be drawn from each turn after that. So I'm going to just take 5 cards here as an example. So I have 2 gold, 1 damage, 2 more gold, so a total of 4 gold, and then 2 more damage. So I could do 3 damage. So I have 4 gold, so I could see what I could buy in here. So there are 4 different types of cards. They have different colors on them. There's Guild, Imperial, Necros, and Wild. But it doesn't matter. You can have any of these colored of cards in the deck that you're building. So you can choose 1 or 2 colors to focus on. You could do all 4 colors. It doesn't matter. And then each card can either do damage, or they can give you money. So this one gives you some money. Or they could have a different ability, like this does damage and lets you draw a card. The red icon with the swords is the damage. The yellow circle is the gold. If it has a green vial, that is health. There are also triggers. So this one, if you play a second wild card on your turn, then it does this trigger as well. So it could be beneficial to focus on a couple of colors. So on my turn, I would use 1 gold to buy this, and then I'd put it in my discard pile and add a new card to the market. I could then use 2 more gold to buy this card here and add that to my deck and put a new card from the market. And then I'll use my last card to buy this here and put out another card from the market. And then these, once they're used, would go into my discard pile as well. And then since this other player doesn't have any cards out that I could damage, I would damage their player by 3 points. So I do 3 damage and they would take that off of their health. So I put all of my cards into my discard, and then I draw my next hand of 5 cards for my next turn. Now every card that you play then gets discarded at the end of the play. The one exception to that is there are some champion cards which have their own health. And so if you had a champion card, you would leave that out, and then you can use that ability each turn until the champion has been defeated, in which case it would go into your discard pile and can be played again later when it comes back into your hand. Each player begins with 50 health. And the goal of the game is to get your opponent's health down to 0 so that you remain the only player with health. This is a really fun game, and this marketplace aspect allows players to create their own deck so that you would end up having your own deck of cards that you've created and you've chosen, but everybody's pulling from the same pool so it stays really balanced. So these are our favorite card games to keep in the trailer for rainy days. What did you think? Did any of those games look like something that you would want to play, or do you have different games that you like to play on a rainy day? Let us know in the comments. Thanks, and happy camping.